Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. I'm excited that you and all of your parts have taken time to be with me and all of my parts. If you are a coach, a client, a therapist, if you are in business or education, and you're curious about the IFS model, you are in the right place. Now, let's see what happens on today's podcast. Hey guys, on today's episode, I speak with my friend, Sue Kazolias. We do that thing that good friends do where we cover a variety of topics and probably don't complete many of them fully. You know how it is after you spend time with someone and afterwards you're like, wait, did she finish that story? Did I finish telling her about that thing that happened to me last week? I hope you feel like you are one of my friends and you are listening in on us talking about speaking for parts, on blending, and multiplicity. I do need to explain the beginning of the podcast. If you've listened to a few of these podcasts, then you know I want listeners to be able to visualize where the guest is. So I send Sue a text the night before and I say, just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to ask you what you see out of your nearest window, which I think is very clear. Sue responds, which I think is so funny, don't understand question, and I live in this city. I just think that's so funny. Anyways, you'll get what I mean, and it gives you a little bit of context to the beginning of our podcast. The other text we talk about a little bit later is Sue's response to my invitation to record the podcast, where she says, a part of me gets nervous, a part of me is excited and wants to help. So yes, maybe, yes, I think. Lastly, I thought you'd like to know that Sue has been diligently working on bringing an IFS training to Russia. And I think that when this airs, she'll actually be returning from that trip to Russia, which is just amazing. And I think you'll really appreciate that after you listen to our podcast today. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure. For you, there can be some flexibility and wiggle room.
I appreciate that. So let's talk about this window issue. So I really just meant if you were to look out a nearest window, so you don't have to be sitting next to a window, but if you were to look out a window, what do you see? You know, when I look out my window, I see a river, I see a tree, I see the sun is out, and the listeners aren't going to be able to see us.
Actually, that totally makes sense now. Well, I see my grill, some old not some old, but some all-weather furniture on the balcony. 1, 2, 3, a condo complex, a back of a house.
Lovely. So you are in the city.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, I love podcasts, but I'm really visual. And so I'm always like visualizing. I always look up who it is, like what they look like, because I want to visualize these people talking. So I thought it would be a fun way of getting a visual of where you are. And
I think I was caught off guard because I'm in a little bit of a fishbowl. So typically we kind of leave the blinds down because that's like it just is what it is.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, right. Because you never know. And I live in New Hampshire in the woods pretty much. So I leave my blinds open all the time. But when who's from Maryland comes in, she's like immediately shutting all the blinds. I know. I'm like, do you really think people are looking in here at us?
Yeah, and then there was a part that thought I was doing something wrong by saying to you, what do you mean?
Oh, okay. So you had a part that felt like you were doing something wrong.
Yeah.
When I had a part that was like, this is the reason why texting isn't always the best way of communication, because people can't understand something that I feel like is really clear. So let's start with what you just said and what I just said, and jump in with that a little bit. Is like, you had a part that was upset or concerned that you weren't getting something or that you were missing something. Yeah. So talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
I think because we had texted back and forth a little bit last night and after a whole day of clients. So I think I was already a little tired. When the window question came up, it was like, ugh, no, what does that mean? Like, it's something different to like figure out or tackle. And to be perfectly honest, because it was like I was working a long day, so I think it landed on an already fairly tired part. That was like another thing to think about.
Yeah, right. When it's so funny because I was thinking it's the easiest question. What drew you to IFS, or tell me about a part? These are harder questions, but look out your window.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so glad. It's kind of funny that I had a chance to say that. It already feels better because
Oh yeah, okay.
it's me a little more available to share the space with you right now.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that too, because I think that's one of the things I love about IFS is if I just give that part voice, there is more space for self-energy. Sometimes if I just say the thing that needs to be said. So talk a little bit about that, about sort of saying, speaking for a part.
To me, it feels like when we were texting, I couldn't explain myself in a way that felt, I'm in the middle of clients. I just kind of threw out the text. I don't know what you mean. Like, then I had like these other like little like prickly ones, like, oh, I don't want to like kind of offend her. And I'm just in a kind of, I'm tired right now. Like, so being able to say to you right now, like, you know what, it came at a tired part, and just like kind of you validating, like, that totally makes sense to me, and it landing like, okay, makes my system settle.
Nice. I love that.
I can feel my kind of heart rate go back to a little bit normal.
Well, and I think the one thing that's interesting that you're saying is, when the part is tired, then it can't think, or sort of that idea, maybe not the part is tired, but when it lands on a part. So, on a Sunday when I'm laying around and I'm thinking about having to go to work on Monday, it's almost like I'm in a leisurely part, and that part can imagine doing the job. Mm-hmm. I love this thing where we say, well, you don't have to do it. That part that's laying around doesn't have to do my job. It's do it, or even my therapist parts. Those parts can do my job. The leisurely part doesn't have to.
Yeah. I totally get what you mean. Like, the difference between something landing, quote unquote, during business hours where you're actually in the like frame, I can answer something, versus, I need to cancel. Can I reschedule? And you get that text on like a Sunday, and you're like, ugh.
I can't even. Yeah. So tell me about how this idea of us being multiple, because that's kind of what we're talking about, is, the part of me that lands on a Sunday when clients are trying to cancel is all about us being multiple. So talk a little bit about what that means and what that means for you.
Well, I think actually now is a great time situationally that since I opened with tired, that feels like really true, like my true part, that I know has been working a little bit. Like, I currently dealing with something I don't usually have to. Just find anything lands a little less openly, a little less accepting.
Yeah.
Like, a little bit, it's like tired mixed with like a tinge of irritability that's really, truly unintentional.
Yeah. And how do you, we have this word, unblend. So how do you unblend from that, or just notice that it's landing on that part? It's just exhausted already from other stuff you have going on.
Yeah. Sometimes it really depends. Sometimes, like, typical was like last night, and actually it didn't end with you. It kind of wound up getting a little more worn out. It's a night's sleep. It's, let me like not think or do anything for a moment, see where I'm at. And that would be like, the old me would want to respond because I want to please everyone. Where after IFS, it's kind of like, something's going on that doesn't feel comfortable or natural. So let me not do anything until I can get there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that is different.
And it's very different.
Yeah. So what originally drew you to IFS?
I left community health center fee for service, and I had switched positions and went to a group, and I felt like fairly young in the career, and had learned a couple of really helpful skills and tools, like some CBT, DBT, and that was helpful. I think what drew me was it was a suggestion from a couple of colleagues, a way of looking at things. I really did not know what I was getting into, quite frankly. I was like, you know what? The people that had suggested it were emphasizing non-pathological. So to me, that felt really appealing.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. So it seemed like with like CBT and like DBT, it's almost this like effortful, as if you're naturally not doing something okay. The thought of looking at every single person that walked into my room as if they had infinite resources and that they had the ability, it just to me seems like right along with like my hope and faith in people.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what I was getting into, though, Tammy. And truth be known, I had no idea.
I think that's a common feeling when people start learning about this. It just opens. It's like it's so expansive.
Initially, I really did not know what I got myself into.
Does that make you feel a little bit overwhelming or a little bit like, so for me, and I feel like the reason why I wanted to do this podcast is it's really a worldview change. It's a totally different way of thinking. Even just taking level 1 is really not enough. It's almost like this life, I don't know.
It's like a dip. It's like a toe dip. And I really didn't do my research, in all fairness. I am a little bit of a trust the universe, trust the people that be. I did not read a bunch of books. I did not know what I was kind of getting into. I didn't even think about my insides and my heart rate and my stomach and my chest. Like, it never really occurred to me.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine and I said something to her about, in IFS as a therapist or a practitioner, you really start doing the work on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Model that you're like, let me learn this model intellectually. And then and I think that's a huge shift is, if you're doing this model, you've done a ton of work on yourself, hopefully.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're like, I didn't know that I was going to be doing that.
No.
Right.
So I'm going to circle back a little bit to what you said. Like, was it overwhelming? Because it's kind of fascinating, right? Like in our world of like, yes, I was a little overwhelmed, but I remember coming home and my partner saying, well, are you going to go back? And I'm like, yeah, because the people were so nice. There was so openness in the way that people were. So that was another attraction to the model.
Definitely. I think that's true. If whatever I go to, there is a different feel to the people that have done the work. And I think it's because they've done the work on themselves.
Yes.
They've done some work on themselves for sure. So where are you in your journey? Like, IFS journey, like, so you've done level 1.
I have the luxury of kind of living in an area that has quite a bit of trainings. I did level 1. They offer a level 1.5 where I live, and that was like kind of adding to the skills and deepening the skills a bit. I did a level 2, the 4-weekend one. Then I did another level 2, which I went to Colorado, and I have not done level 3, but I have PA'd. Actually, this year I've PA'd 3 times, and last year I think I did a week of a 2-week, and the year before a week of a 2-week. So PAing is certainly kind of where my journey is, and practice groups. I see an IFS therapist. I mean, I'm just in it.
You are sold out.
Yeah, exactly. Who can deny all this love, right?
I know. You're like, soak it in. Give me more.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a segment that I'm going to call IRL. IRL means, for us old people, or us that are over 25. Okay. all the kids say like, oh, do you want to meet IRL? I'm going to give you a problem that I'm having. And I want you to tell me what you think, sort of explain the problem in IFS terms or with an IFS worldview.
Okay.
So just so that people that maybe aren't super familiar with IFS can sort of see what we're saying, or sort of, if I said, I'm trying to break a habit of biting my nails, if we looked at a CBT lens, that would look a certain way. If we looked at an IFS lens, it would look a certain way. We would treat it, we would think about it differently.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how we think about problems.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my problem. I'm sick, if you can hear this sort of thing happening. And my husband and I want to go to New York City. We have plans to go to New York City this weekend. And bring the boy. So I've got the husband and the boy. The boy's 7. And we love to go to New York City at Christmas time. So I'm really struggling with, I'm sick and I don't really feel well. And, maybe they should go. I don't know. I'm feeling a lot of stress, and I'm almost feeling a little bit like, pity me, like, will you guys just go and I'll just stay here? And I also am feeling a little bit angry that I'm sick. Like, why am I sick at this time? That's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also feeling like, suck it up, take Sudafed and just go. So, but it feels like I feel a lot of conflict. And so maybe can you help me understand this conflict that I'm feeling?
It sounds like that you have a little bit of a polarization going on, to go
Okay.
to not go. And as I say that, like, you might be sensing it either in your mind, your body, or like experientially.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
At
So
least that's what I'm hearing.
polarization means, what does polarization mean?
So you got one hand that's saying, suck it up. Then you kind of have another part that's like, I'm so aggravated that I'm sick, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if they kind of know that each other exists.
Yeah. And I think even as you say that, even as you kind of map that out, that I have this part and this part, I can feel my body like sink into my chair a little bit. Like, okay, I can see there are these different parts that have different agendas or different ideas. That actually just helps me relax a little bit. Like, I can notice some softening and I feel less tension just by noticing, or just by calling out, oh, it's not like I'm all over the place, like I don't know what to do. It's just like, oh, okay, there's a part that doesn't want to go, a part that's mad, a part that's like, suck it up. And they're all kind of pulling in different directions, which
Yeah,
heart racing. My heart starts racing like, oh, I don't know what to do.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that feels kind of understandable with a polarity, right? When you feel pulled, what would it look like to kind of go a little further with exploring both of those parts? Like, I should suck it up. Shoot, I'm angry. Like, if both of those could separate from you in this like reduced, like kind of normal heart rate state, would they have to work as hard if they could kind of like relax back and trust you?
Oh, I love that. And I almost, as you're talking, I can almost see like all these little, like a little part that's saying this. And now I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, I'm in charge. And I can kind of see these little parts that are saying, like, raising their hand, like, I think we should do this. And I think we should do this. And
Mhm.
I'm actually just noticing, like, little students in a classroom raising up, telling me their ideas. And I'm the teacher. And they just telling me and having me look at them like, okay, yes, I see. That actually feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just want me to hear them. Like, they just want, me to see them raise their hand and say, this is what I think we should do. And then I'm like, that feels really good.
That does feel different.
It feels a lot different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I'm noticing is you didn't give me an answer, or you didn't tell me what I should do. And I think it's different.
No, because I firmly believe that your system, if you listen to it, is going to kind of tell you.
Yeah, that feels really different to me. That's different than any maybe not any other, but that feels like a different way of thinking.
Yes, and it's sometimes people come in and don't like it, and that's okay.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That feels really great, and I think that explains things for me really clearly, and I actually feel better, even though I don't necessarily know what to do. I feel like the parts of me that have all these different opinions have been seen, and just me seeing them feels lighter. I feel lighter.
Well, and the nice thing about this model is you really don't need me to continue looking into it.
Tell me what you mean by that.
So you said you kind of could see them raising their hands. You could get off this phone call with me and like listen to them a little bit more and kind of invite, and that might even settle your system even more.
I think I'll do that. That feels really good.
And it has nothing to do with me. It's all about you, your open heart, and both of those parts.
That's great, Sue. Thank you. So I have one more question for you. It's kind of a fun question. Hopefully, I don't know. The window question wasn't that fun.
This is pretty painless.
Good. I'm so glad. If you were not a therapist and you could do anything you wanted to do, money didn't matter, what would you do?
It's kind of, that one's a little tricky because this is my second stint. And my first love is Russian language. Yeah. So I did have a little bit of a dabble at translating something. That one's really tricky. I don't know, maybe a backup dancer?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking definitely backup dancer. So who would you be a backup dancer for?
Aretha Franklin.
Yes. I love that answer. Now that sounds fun.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I love being asked that.
Yeah. Oh, good. And I love a backup dancer. I want to come backup dance with you. Let's have a dance the next time we see each other.
Absolutely. I think that is in the cards.
Yes. Okay, good. Sue, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will see you soon.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you liked this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFS Tammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time.